History has its famous villains, right? The names we all know. But what about the ones who were, well, even more monstrous, but somehow managed to fly under the radar? Today, we're going to pull back the curtain on some of the most truly evil people you've probably never even heard of. All right, let's kick this off with a little quiz. Who do you think holds the Guinness World Record for the most murders ever by a single person? I bet your mind is already jumping to some famous dictator or a serial killer from the movies, but the real answer? It's way more specific and honestly, way more chilling. Yeah, it's not some general on a battlefield or a wild cult leader. Nope. The record belongs to a guy who treated mass murder like he was a factory manager. He perfected this absolutely cold, efficient, industrial process for death. So let's meet him. His name was Vasily Blokhin. He was Joseph Stalin's top executioner for the NKVD. That was the Soviet Union's super brutal secret police, basically the forerunner to the KGB. And get this, Blokhin wasn't some guy sitting in an office giving orders, oh no. He was hands-on in the most horrifying way you can possibly imagine. Okay, so check this out. In 1940, during what's known as the Katyn Massacre, Blokhin personally executed 7,000 Polish prisoners of war. Just let that number sink in. 7,000 people. And that was just one job for him in a very, very long and bloody career. And he did all of that in just 28 days. 28 days. That breaks down to about 250 executions every single day for almost a month straight. He was working these relentless 10-hour shifts, just killing. He had it down to a science, a truly methodical system, like a literal assembly line for death. A new prisoner came in, was positioned, and executed, about one every 3 minutes. It was just cold, mechanical, and designed for one thing: maximum output. And here's a really twisted detail. His weapon of choice, a German-made pistol. Now, why would he do that? Well, it was a totally calculated move. The idea was, if these mass graves were ever found, the German bullets would be the perfect way to frame someone else. They could just point the fingers straight at the Nazis. You have to wonder, right? How could anyone do something like this? From everything we know, Blokhin was just completely emotionally detached. This quote says it all, really. For him, mass murder wasn't some horrific atrocity. It was just another task on his to-do list, like filing paperwork. But Blokhin didn't get some dramatic showdown or a big trial. Nope. When his boss, Stalin, died, the new guys in charge, they wanted nothing to do with him. They stripped him of his rank, took away his honors, and he basically just fell apart. He died in total disgrace, having literally drunk himself to death by the time he was 60. So, Blokhin was a monster who operated in the shadows, a tool of the state. But our next guy, Ante Pavelic, he was something else entirely. He was the fanatical leader of a fascist regime, and he brought his brand of evil right out into the open for everyone to see. Now, to really get a grip on Pavelic, you first have to understand his creation, the Ustasha. Think of it as his personal political and military weapon. It was a movement just absolutely fueled by this extreme, hardcore nationalism, where any atrocity was considered okay as long as it helped create what they called a pure Croatia. So when the Nazis put him in charge as the dictator of Croatia back in 1941, Pavelic just unleashed this campaign of ethnic cleansing that was so brutal, it's hard to even wrap your head around. And if you need one example of just how uniquely depraved his regime was, look no further than the Sisak concentration camp. It was the only camp in all of World War II designed specifically for children. I mean, the Ustasha's violence was so off the charts, it even shocked their Nazi allies. Just let that sink in for a second. A high-ranking Nazi general, a guy who was no stranger to brutality, right? He saw what they were doing and basically reported back, the Ustasha have gone raging mad. When you've shocked the Nazis, you've unlocked a whole new level of evil. But unlike Blokhin, Pavelic actually managed to get away, at least at first. After the war ended, he used those infamous rat lines, the post-war escape routes, to flee to Argentina and then later to Franco's Spain. He got away with it for years, but a different kind of justice eventually caught up with him. He died from wounds he got during an assassination attempt. Okay, so we've seen a state-sponsored monster and a fanatical nationalist. But what happens when one man's ego just completely consumes an entire nation? Our next guy wasn't driven by some cold ideology or nationalistic passion. His tyranny was just a chaotic storm of his own paranoia, his greed, and just breathtaking cruelty. Let's talk about Idi Amin. He blasted his way into power in Uganda with a military coup in 1971. And for the next 8 years, he dragged the entire nation along on this terrifying, completely unpredictable ride based on his every whim. Just look at these numbers. During his time in power, it's estimated that somewhere between 300,000 and 500,000 Ugandans were murdered. Artists, journalists, judges, business owners, literally anyone he saw as a potential threat was a target. It's no wonder he earned the name the Butcher of Africa. And here's the thing about Amin. His brutality was matched only by his absolute catastrophic incompetence. It wasn't enough for him to murder his people, he had to destroy Uganda's economy too. He kicked out the entire Asian minority, who were basically the country's economic backbone, and just handed their businesses to his buddies who had no clue what they were doing. The result? The whole economy just tanked, wiping out almost all the government's tax revenue, and right in the middle of all this chaos, there were these wild rumors, including that he practiced cannibalism. He supposedly once said he found human flesh too salty. So what finally brought him down? Well, in the end, it was his own ego. He tried to invade Tanzania, it backfired big time, and they launched a counterattack that just completely toppled his regime. But just like Pavlich, he never faced a trial. He got away, lived a pretty comfortable life in exile in Saudi Arabia, and died there in 2003. Okay, so our final story tonight shifts gears a little bit. We're moving away from the terror of dictators and state executioners. Now we're going to look at the kind of evil that can just fester inside one single person, leading to one of the most prolific and just horrifying serial killing sprees in modern history. Look at that number, 1,853 years. That was the initial sentence given to Luis Garvito, a man known simply as La Bestia, the Beast. And his crime? The absolutely brutal murder of at least 193 children, and authorities are pretty sure the real number is much, much higher. But, and you're not going to believe this, there was a massive legal loophole. Back then, Colombian law had a cap on prison sentences. The absolute maximum for any crime was just 40 years. So that sentence, nearly 2,000 years, was legally chopped down to just 4 decades. It's insane. And it gets even worse, because Garavito cooperated with the police, helped them find the bodies of the children he murdered. His already ridiculous 40-year sentence was nearly cut in half again, down to just 22 years. The idea that this monster could actually walk free in his own lifetime, well, that sparked absolute outrage across the entire country. And that's when the power of the people really kicked in. The public outcry was so huge, so intense, that the president of Colombia himself had to step in and promise that Garavito would never, ever be freed. That pressure, that public anger, basically closed the legal loopholes and made sure he stayed locked up. He ended up dying in prison from cancer in 2023. So let's just do a quick recap of the monsters we've talked about today. You've got the cold, bureaucratic evil of Vasily Blokhin, the fanatical, ideological evil of Ante Pavlich and Idi Amin, and the purely predatory evil of Luis Garavito. These are 4 people whose horrific crimes have, for the most part, been overshadowed by history's more famous villains. And all of this really leaves us with one last, pretty unsettling thought. The evil that we actually know about is terrifying enough, right? But it makes you wonder how many of history's other hidden monsters are still out there, completely unknown.